Sarah Hartsfield, the woman convicted of murdering her fifth husband with insulin, has now been sentenced to life in prison.
The jury deliberated just for about an hour before returning to the courtroom and delivering this guilty verdict. Sarah Hartsfield found guilty of killing her fifth husband, Joseph Hartsfield, who died of an insulin overdose.
The story begins in a small courtroom in Chambers County, Texas. The fluorescent lights hum faintly overhead, reflecting off cold beige walls that have seen too many broken lives. The air feels heavy, as if grief itself has settled into every corner. Sarah Hartsfield, 50 years old, sits motionless at the defendant's table, her eyes dull, her expression unreadable. Around her, the world buzzes, journalists scribbling, camera shutters clicking, the quiet sob of a man's sister in the back row. The jury foreman rises, a folded piece of paper trembling in his hand. Guilty. That single word slices through the silence. It's the kind of word that ends a life without ending the heartbeat. Sarah doesn't flinch. She doesn't cry. She simply stares ahead as if the verdict was something she'd already heard years ago, inside herself. But to understand how she arrived here, in this cold Texas courtroom, condemned to life behind bars, one has to trace the long, winding trail of heartbreak, secrets, and betrayal that marked every step of her past. Sarah was born and raised in Texas, a state where people prided themselves on grit, faith, and family. From a young age, she learned how to keep up appearances. Her father was a man of discipline, her mother, a woman of silence. At home, feelings were managed like chores, done quickly, quietly, without complaint. Sarah grew up believing that strength meant never letting anyone see you break. In her early 20s, she joined the Army. The structure, the order, the uniform, it all gave her a sense of purpose she'd been searching for. But underneath that sense of purpose was something else: loneliness. She longed for affection, for belonging, for someone to see her beyond the uniform. When she met her first husband, she thought she had found that person. They married quickly. Too quickly. But the cracks appeared just as fast. Arguments over money, jealousy, long absences, accusations. She told herself, every couple fights, every marriage has its seasons. But what she didn't realize then was that every wound left a scar, and she was collecting them faster than she could heal. By the time she left her first marriage, Sarah had learned how to hide pain with charm. She smiled even when her heart was bleeding. She remarried, then again. Each relationship started with hope and ended in disillusionment. Love always began as a rescue and ended as a battlefield. Her friends stopped asking questions. Her family stopped offering advice. And somewhere along the line, Sarah stopped believing in happy endings. Years later, she settled in Chambers County, a quiet stretch of Texas where the air smelled of salt and diesel, where neighbors waved but didn't pry. It was there she met Joseph Hartsfield, a kind, middle-aged man who had already known his share of suffering. Joseph had diabetes. He managed it carefully, but it controlled his life. The insulin, the diet, the routine. He was cautious, thoughtful, the type of man who loved deeply but feared losing what little control he had. When Joseph met Sarah, she was confident, charming, full of energy. She spoke of fresh starts and faith and new beginnings. He fell in love almost instantly. He believed she was the woman who would bring stability into his life. She, in turn, saw him as the man who might finally stay. Their marriage in 2022 looked picture-perfect on Facebook. Smiling faces, Sunday dinners, affectionate posts. But beneath that digital mirage, something darker was brewing. Neighbors would later recall the tension, the arguments muffled through closed windows, Joseph's sudden disappearances, Sarah's quiet fury. There were whispers that Joseph had grown fearful. "If anything happens to me," he allegedly told his sister, "look at Sarah." Those words would echo through time. In early January 2023, everything unraveled. It was a cold morning when the 911 call came in. Joseph was unresponsive. Sarah claimed she had gone to sleep and found him hours later, but something didn't add up. Investigators would later find that her phone showed activity, messages sent, social media scrolling, during the hours she said she slept. Paramedics rushed Joseph to the hospital, his body slipping toward coma, his blood saturated with insulin far beyond what was safe. Doctors fought to revive him, but it was too late. Joseph Hartsfield died that day. His cause of death? Insulin toxicity. When detectives questioned Sarah, she was calm, too calm. She told them Joseph had mismanaged his dosage, but the more they looked, the less they believed her. His insulin pump was functioning properly. His dosage logs didn't match the levels found in his system. And then came the text messages. Messages that painted a portrait of a marriage falling apart, of jealousy, resentment, and control. Messages in which Sarah mocked Joseph's health, accused him of weakness, threatened to leave him. As investigators dug deeper, another chilling discovery emerged. The ghosts of her past. 5 marriages, 4 dead or missing men. Accidents, suicides, unexplained circumstances. Each one leaving behind confusion and suspicion, yet never enough evidence for a charge. Until now. Joseph's family began to speak out. They demanded answers. "She did this," she said through tears. "She finally did what we were afraid she'd do." The media picked up the story, framing Sarah as the Texas Black Widow. But beneath the headlines, there was still the human tragedy, the slow disintegration of 2 people who once believed in love, now trapped in a fatal dance of control and despair. Sarah's arrest in February 2023 shook the small Texas community. Cameras followed her from her home to the county jail. She kept her chin up, even as the handcuffs clicked. She said, "I didn't kill him," to reporters, her voice steady. But her eyes, those eyes told another story. Months passed. Evidence mounted, witnesses testified, and as the trial neared, Sarah's past became her prosecution. Old lovers resurfaced. Friends whispered of strange coincidences, men falling ill, fires breaking out, disappearances that made no sense. A former husband had allegedly told police years ago that he feared Sarah might try to poison him. Another relationship ended after a mysterious car crash that left her partner hospitalized. Whether these were patterns of coincidence or manipulation, one thing was clear. The story of Sarah Hartsfield was no longer just about one death. It was about a lifetime of blurred lines between love and destruction. The trial began in late 2025. The courtroom was packed, family on one side, reporters on the other. The prosecution laid out its case meticulously. Text messages, digital footprints, autopsy reports. The image of Joseph's lifeless body projected onto a courtroom screen. Gasps filled the room. They said Sarah delayed calling 911 for at least 4 hours after finding Joseph unconscious. They said she deleted messages that could have saved his life. They said her history was no accident. It was a pattern. The defense countered. Sarah was misunderstood, unlucky in love, a woman vilified by circumstance. They portrayed Joseph as controlling, paranoid, sometimes erratic due to his illness. But in the court of public opinion, she was already condemned. For 2 weeks, every detail of her private life was dissected, exposed, torn apart. The woman who once lived behind closed doors now had nowhere to hide. When the time came for her to testify, Sarah took the stand. Her voice trembled as she spoke about love, loss, and loneliness. She said she loved Joseph. She said she would never hurt him, but as she spoke, the jurors watched not her words, but her eyes. And in those eyes, they saw something hollow. When the verdict finally came, the air felt heavy enough to break. Guilty of murder. Sarah exhaled, slow and deliberate. Her lips quivered, but no sound came. Around her, Joseph's family wept openly. The judge's voice was stern but tired. He declared life imprisonment, without the possibility of parole. Outside the courthouse, the Texas sun blazed mercilessly. The cameras swarmed, reporters shouting questions. "Do you feel any remorse?" one asked. Sarah turned slightly, her hand shielding her eyes from the light. "I don't have anything to say," she whispered. That was the last time the public heard her voice. Inside her prison cell, time moved differently. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. The walls closed in like the consequences of her choices. She kept a small Bible on her nightstand, one she never used to read before. Some said she found faith, others said she found nothing but regret. No one knows what she thinks about in those endless hours, but perhaps she replays the moments, the laughter in the kitchen, Joseph's slow smile, the sound of his voice when he said his name. Perhaps she remembers the messages she sent in anger, the silence she let linger too long. And perhaps she finally feels the weight of what she's done. But yet, somewhere within that prison, a flicker of humanity still remains. Not redemption, perhaps, but awareness. The understanding that betrayal doesn't begin with murder, it begins with neglect, resentment, the slow erosion of empathy. For Joseph's family, justice brought no joy. His sister once told a local reporter, "You think you'll feel peace when the verdict comes, but all I feel is emptiness." Her words carried the truth most people never see in headlines, that justice and closure are not the same thing. The story of Sarah Hartsfield is not just a crime story,
It's a mirror, a reflection of how human hearts can twist when pain is left unhealed, when love turns to obsession, and when control replaces care. Sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not the ones who kill in rage, but the ones who kill while smiling. Years later, people still talk about her. They debate whether she was a predator or a broken woman, whether she planned every step or stumbled into madness. Some pity her, others despise her, but all agree on one thing: her choices destroyed lives, including her own. In the end, Sarah's life became the cautionary tale she never saw coming. The same walls that once hid her secrets now contain her forever. There are no more Facebook posts, no more smiles for the camera, no more stories of new beginnings. Just the quiet hum of prison lights and a woman alone with the truth she tried to outrun. And somewhere, beyond those gray walls, in a modest Texas cemetery, Joseph Hartsfield rests beneath a simple headstone. His sister visits often. She brings flowers, sometimes sunflowers, his favorite. She kneels, runs her fingers across his name, and whispers, "You can rest now. She can't hurt anyone anymore." The camera lingers there, a single shot of stillness after years of chaos. Because at its heart, this isn't a story about murder. It's a story about the price of deception, the weight of denial, and the long shadow of unresolved pain. When love turns to control, and control turns to cruelty, tragedy becomes inevitable. And yet there's one last truth in the quiet of that Texas graveyard, that even in the wreckage, there can be light. If you've been touched by this story, don't let it fade into silence. Share it, talk about it, because silence is where pain grows, and truth, no matter how hard, can heal. And the story of Sarah Hartsfield ends not with forgiveness, but with understanding that justice, however delayed, is still a kind of mercy. Thank you for watching.